4 years, the SEC belonged to Alabama. LSU, they were just another team trying to find their way back to the top.
We are so bad at football.
A once great program overshadowed by the Alabama Crimson Tide's dominance. But in 2019, everything was about to change. A transfer quarterback, a pair of unproven yet dynamic receivers, and a head coach nobody thought could take down this Saban dynasty. This is a team that would shock the college football world, and I'm going to try to recreate their historic season in college football 25. In 2003, the college football world changed forever. After a half-century bereft of championship glory, a sleeping tiger was awakened by a man we now call the GOAT. Nick Saban, known to us as the man who unleashed a crimson tide upon the nation, first tasted greatness draped in purple and gold. But shortly after reaching that pinnacle, the state of Louisiana discovered their hero to be a snake in the grass.
The hardest thing that I've ever had to do professionally was to get in front of my team today and tell them that I was going to no longer be their coach.
Determined to prove their championship gold was by merit and not Saban alone, the Tigers rebuilt, and in 2007 they solidified their place as a college football powerhouse.
In the end, the scoreboard read 38-24, and LSU was national champions for the second time this decade and the first to win 2 BCS national titles.
Just as LSU firmly established themselves as the cream of the SEC crop, the unthinkable happened.
Again, we are moments away from Mal Moore, the athletic director at the University of Alabama, introducing Nick Saban as he prepared to announce the new head coach at the University of Alabama.
The express goal was to hire a coach with championship credentials. While a number of outstanding individuals expressed interest in becoming the coach of the Crimson Tide, one person who always stood out was Nick Saban, a man who has coached a team to the pinnacle of college football.
You know, when I raised that crystal for the people of Louisiana, for LSU, when we won the national championship.
The mountaintop. In 2012, he met his old team LSU in the championship game and routed his old program to the tune of 21-0.
To the 20, to the 10, touchdown! Foot Fowler, touchdown Alabama. This side, the Andrew White touchdown.
7 straight years, the Tide would defeat the Tigers in SEC deciding games until hope. A transfer from Ohio State, Joe Burrow, arrived in Baton Rouge.
Down in Baton Rouge, LSU beginning fall camp today, and of course, what everyone wanted to see was Joe Burrow in the purple and gold practice jersey for the first time. The Ohio State transfer is one of 4 quarterbacks competing for the starting job. On day 1, he ran with the 4th team, but head coach Ed Orgeron says he certainly looks the part.
A former high school star out of Athens, Ohio, a 4-star recruit with offers from all over the country, yet his first few years in college were marked more by the bench than the box score. Burrow committed to Ohio State, but with JT Barrett entrenched as a starter and then Dwayne Haskins waiting in the wings, he found himself buried on the depth chart. In 2018, he made a bold decision, betting on himself and transferring to LSU, a team known more for grinding, low-scoring games than lighting up scoreboards. Their hope was that by marrying that stout defensive pedigree to a high-volume passer, the sky would be the limit. Then November 3rd, number 1 Alabama met number 3 LSU with a chance at last to break. The Niggers were becoming written off as a perennial number 2, incapable of holding back Nick Saban and the dreaded Crimson Tide.
Welcome to week 1 of the 2019 college football season. Today, Rice is going to have a shot at the LSU Tigers. We've seen crazier upsets before, but with QB Burrow coming off a promising last campaign, they look primed to put up big numbers behind their electric new playmakers.
First, there was Jamar Chase. Unlike Burrow, Chase had been a known quantity since high school, a 5-star prospect with a reputation for being one of the most explosive receivers in the country. Was he going to live up to his potential, or would he become another hyped recruit who couldn't quite put it together on Saturdays? Then there was Justin Jefferson, the kid nobody saw coming. He didn't didn't come to Baton Rouge with the expectations of Chase or the pedigree of Burrow. His story was about proving people wrong. He came into 2019 having been a solid contributor the year before, but when the preseason list came out, you didn't see his name anywhere.
And that will wrap things up here as LSU hangs 63 on Rice today. Joe Burrow with a 6-touchdown performance driven by an 80% completion percentage. Behind Jefferson's 9 catches and Jamar Chase's 200 yards, it looks like his young receivers could be a revelation. Watch out, SEC. We have an electric trio here at LSU.
Welcome to the beginning of the revolution in Baton Rouge. This is chapter 1, and you are about to see the rise of the Big Three. Now, week 2 brought a monumental test for LSU as they faced the number 2 ranked Clemson Tigers. Clemson came in undefeated, bringing a tough defense and high expectations, but LSU was ready to prove that they could play with anyone. Clemson started the game strong, completing a huge pass down the seam to get inside LSU's 40-yard line, but the Tigers defense responded, making crucial stops and forcing a third down.
3rd and 3, play action. LSU's going to get a free rusher, and that ball is going to go down. Clemson is going to be held to 3.
With that, Clemson takes an early 3-0 lead. When Joe Burrow and LSU's offense took the field, they wasted no time making a statement. Burrow moved the ball with precision, hitting Thaddeus Moss on a crossing route for a huge gain to get inside the 10-yard line. 2 plays later, Clyde Edwards-Helaire powered in the end zone to give LSU the lead 7-3. Clemson came back running the ball effectively with a couple of big carries moving them inside LSU territory, but on 3rd down, Derek Stingley Jr. made a play.
Stingley with the big hit, and that ball is going to be lodged out. Once again, Clemson is going to have to settle for a field goal.
With that, Clemson cuts the lead to 7-6. Then Burrow came out dealing on the next drive, distributing the ball to multiple receivers, showing his growing command of the offense. They were able to march into the Clemson red zone, and Burrow dropped back.
And in the field, he's going to go to Marshall, and that route is going to be undercut. That is going to be an interception, Clemson football.
LSU's momentum was halted with that big play by the Clemson defense, but then the Tigers defense stepped up, forcing a quick 3-and-out and getting the ball back for their O. So LSU's offense got back on track, and Burrow delivered a strike to Jamar Chase up the sideline, followed by Edwards-Helaire getting a handoff up the middle.
And Helaire, the ball carrier on the play here. This is going to be an excellently blocked play, but what seals it is him cutting it to the outside and walking in for an LSU touchdown.
But then before the half, Clemson managed to drive down and kick their own field goal, making it 14-9. Then with just 42 seconds left, LSU could have just ran out the clock, but Burrow saw an opportunity. Backed up on his own 18-yard line, Burrow found Jefferson streaking down the field.
And that's just crazy. Out of all the players to draw something up for going into the end of the half, and you want to hit somebody for a go-ahead shot, you pick the young buck, Justin Jefferson. And right here, number 2, he just beats them with his speed and his knowledge of where the open zone is going to be. Him and Burrow have been on the same page both games this year, and they sure are as well today.
With only 14 seconds left, for some reason, LSU brought an all-out blitz, and this was an awful play call. Clemson's receiver catches a corner route, breaks a tackle, and sprints for a 60-yard touchdown. Coming out of the half, Burrow and the LSU offense took control. Burrow orchestrated a classic drive, spreading the ball around and getting it down to the 2-yard line before handing it off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire for another touchdown. Clemson responded with a strong drive, mixing the run and the pass to march down the field, but once again, LSU's defense held firm, and on a big 3rd down inside the 10, they stopped them, and Clemson had to settle for another field goal. Early in the 4th quarter, Burrow hit Thaddeus Moss on a big crossing route for a huge pickup, but then the drive starts to stall, and the Tigers face a crucial 4th and 2. LSU decides to get aggressive and go for it, and Burrow found Edwards-Helaire on the check down to convert and keep the drive alive. On the next play, Burrow threw a bubble screen to Justin Jefferson, who turned upfield.
Green grass for Justin Jefferson, and he is going to take that for another LSU touchdown. Let me hear you roar, he says to the Tigers audience here in Death Valley.
From there, LSU's defense took over. Christian Fulton sealed the game with a late interception, and LSU walked away with a convincing 42-16 victory over the number 2 team in the country. LSU's defense only allowed 332 yards, while the offense exploded for 510 total yards. Joe Burrow threw 418 yards himself and 3 touchdowns, while Jefferson led all receivers with 154 yards and 2 scores. Edwards-Helaire added 3 rushing touchdowns to cap off an all-around dominant performance.
LSU came into this game with something to prove, and they delivered. Burrow, Jefferson, Chase, unstoppable. LSU has put the rest of the country on notice, and if they didn't know before, they do. This team is for real.
Next on LSU's schedule was Kent State, a unranked team that the Tigers were hoping they could sink their teeth into. And LSU wasted no time showing their dominance. This game was an opportunity to build on the momentum from their big win over Clemson, and LSU did just that, controlling the game from start to finish. Joe Burrow was unstoppable, throwing for 551 yards and 3 touchdowns, spreading the ball to his talented receiving core. Jamar Chase led the way with 237 yards on 7 catches, including a 53-yard touchdown that left Kent State's secondary in shambles. Justin Jefferson also made his mark, hauling in 10 receptions for 134 yards and a score. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a workhorse, rushing for 28 times, 104 yards and 2 touchdowns, adding balance to an explosive offense that totaled 633 yards. Defensively, LSU smothered Kent State's attack, holding them to just 328 yards. Tyler Shelvin and Jacoby Stevens were relentless, combining for 3 sacks as the Tigers kept Kent State on the back foot throughout. The final score was 45-15, with LSU making a clear statement. The offense was firing on all cylinders, while the defense showcased their physicality and dominance. This game was another step forward for a team that was showing all the signs of a true championship contender. LSU's next matchup was against FCS Southeast, and it quickly turned into a showcase of the Tigers' overwhelming talent. From the first snap, LSU dominated on both sides of the ball, cruising to a 69-6 win. Joe Cool delivered another stellar performance, completing 30 of 39 passes for 468 yards and 5 scores. He was in complete control, spreading the ball efficiently to his playmakers. Justin Jefferson led the receiving core with 10 receptions for 164 yards and a touchdown, while Jamar Chase added 2 scores on 6 catches for 109 yards. On the ground, Helaire was the driving force once again, rushing for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns on 20 carries. LSU's balanced offensive attack racked up 615 yards, leaving their FCS opponent with no answer. Defensively, LSU was just as dominant, allowing only 171 yards, while Derek Stingley Jr. showcased his ball hawking skills with a crucial interception. LSU's defense held their opponent just 6 points, stifling any attempt to move the ball. This blowout win wrapped up the early portion of the schedule, showcasing LSU's dominance and giving them momentum heading into the next phase. But now the real test awaited, as the demanding SEC schedule was about to begin. For years, LSU is a giant hiding in plain sight. With a rich football history and a passionate fan base, they had tasted greatness before. They'd seen their name engraved on the national championship trophy in 2003 and 2007. But since then, they'd been caught in the shadow of a new juggernaut, the Alabama Crimson Tide, led by their ex-head coach Nick Saban. The Tide have become the new standard in college football, dominating the SEC and the national landscape with a relentless run of championships, and every season, no matter the rankings, no matter the records, the path to the SEC title ran through Tuscaloosa. LSU had tried everything to claw their way back to the top. They'd recruited 5-star players, hired big-name coaches, and fought tooth and nail in primetime matchups, but time and time again, they found themselves just one step short. Fans grew accustomed to heartbreak. Despite rosters full of NFL talent, every victory felt over For over a decade, LSU's legacy had become one of missed opportunities. They'd become the team that had talent but lacked the final piece to turn potential into dominance. But this team was aiming to not be another disappointing chapter in the history of LSU football. They had weapons on both sides of the ball because while everyone was focused on the offense, this defense was loaded with game-changing talent. Led by a core of players like Grant Delpit, a preseason All-American at safety, Patrick Queen, a linebacker with the speed and range of a safety, and a young phenom in Derek Stingley Jr., who is one of the most talented cornerbacks that college football had seen in years. They were a unit capable of shutting down anyone, but just like the offense, they had something to prove. Even with Delpit being named a top NFL prospect and Stingley receiving praise as one of the best true freshmen in the country, they were talented, but the perception remained. When they go up against Alabama or a high-powered SEC opponent, would they bend or would they break? Week after week, LSU was fighting on two fronts, their opponents on the field and the critics off of it. Their season was starting strong, but no one in the national media was calling them contenders. There just wasn't that belief that they could take down the Tide. For Alabama, it was business as usual. Another championship run, another Heisman contender at quarterback, another season where everyone expected them to roll through the SEC unscathed. But as the SEC schedule was about to start, the Tigers rolled through their early opponents, and they weren't just winning, they were dominating. They were putting up points that LSU fans had never seen before and holding down offenses that were supposed to give them trouble. This wasn't the typical grinded out LSU team. They were winning with style and swagger, and they had a chip on their shoulder the size of Death Valley. Burrow heard the noise, the team heard it, and it was about time that the college football world learned what LSU was really capable of. They were no longer content with just being good. This was a team on a mission to show that they weren't just going to beat Alabama, they were going to run through the entire SEC and silence every critic and prove that there was a new dynasty here in the making. With a roster full of offensive stars and a defense trying to reclaim its title as the best in the SEC, LSU was about to face its toughest stretch of the season, and they were aiming to make history. So to start the SEC schedule, it was time for a monumental clash against the number 2 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia boasted a top-tier defense, and many expected the LSU offense to struggle on the road in Athens, but the Tigers were dead set to come out firing and take down the Dogs. On the opening drive, Burrow led a surgical march down the field, spreading the ball around to his receivers with precision. He capped it off with a strike to Thaddeus Moss in the end zone for an opening touchdown. Touchdown LSU! What a start for the Tigers! Joe Burrow is in complete control, and Moss finds himself wide open in the end zone. LSU jumped out to a 7-0 lead, setting the tone early. On the defensive side of the ball, LSU quickly showed their dominance, with Rashard Lewis bursting through to sack the Georgia quarterback on the opening drive, forcing a punt. And there's Lawrence, sack for the Tigers. Georgia's gonna have to figure out a way to handle this pressure that the Tigers are bringing. At the end of quarter number 1, LSU led 7-0. Midway through the second quarter, the two teams traded turnovers, but then came the moment that put the crowd on their feet. Burrow dropped back and found a streaking Jamar Chase down the sideline. Burrow lets it fly. Chase is wide open. Caught at the 30, 20, 10. Touchdown LSU, a 70-yard bomb from Burrow to Chase, and just like that, the Tigers are up 14-0. Then Georgia answered with a field goal to make it 14-3, but then with less than 2 minutes to go in the half, Georgia struck again. Their receiver caught a post route over the middle before breaking a tackle and sprinted 50 yards into the end zone. He's still on his feet, and he's gone. Touchdown Georgia, and the Dogs are right back in this one. Suddenly, it was a 14-10 game. Burrow, however, wasn't finished. He orchestrated another great drive before halftime, slicing through the Bulldogs defense and finding Jefferson for a 3-yard touchdown with just 50 seconds left in the half. Burrow throw to Jefferson and he's in. LSU responds immediately, and that's a big-time answer before the half. LSU went into the break leading 21-10. To start the third quarter, Georgia began to gain some momentum, piercing together a solid drive that included a big QB scramble that moved them into the red zone, but then came a huge play for LSU. A tip pass floated in the air, and superstar freshman Derek Stingley Jr. made a play. Pass goes into the end zone. It's tipped up in the air, and Stingley with the pick. He's got blockers. He could go all the way. He's down to the 30, down to the 20, to the 10. Touchdown. Pick six. Derek Stingley Jr. The interception return for a touchdown blew the game wide open, putting LSU up 28-10 and silencing the home crowd. From there, LSU never looked back. Joe Burrow was masterful, finishing 31 of 39 for 411 yards and 4 touchdowns, carving up the Georgia defense, showing the swagger and confidence that Joe Cool was becoming known for. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a force on the ground and in the passing game, racking up 93 yards rushing and 73 through the air. Jamar Chase ended the day with 112 receiving yards, including that unforgettable 70-yard touchdown. And they finished this one off 45-17. On defense, Stingley Jr. recorded 2 interceptions while Rashard Lawrence had 2 sacks, constantly pressuring Georgia's quarterbacks and just really never allowing him to get comfortable. LSU came into Georgia's house and dominated the Dogs. This wasn't just a win, it was a statement, and Joe Burrow is playing at another level. The defense is creating turnovers, and LSU looks like a team that is ready to take on anybody. It was a perfect start to this defining stretch of SEC play, setting the tone for what was to come. Next came a showdown with number 13 Texas, a dangerous team that could put up points in a hurry, and another opponent that they would have to battle through to win the SEC crown. But LSU had an answer for everything that Texas threw at them. Joe Burrow once again showed why he was emerging as one of the most promising quarterbacks in college football, throwing for 408 yards and 5 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, who was often overlooked coming into the season, had 9 receptions for 147 yards and a touchdown, proving he was just as important to this offense as Chase, and Jamar himself had 4 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns, including an electrifying 87-yard score that ignited the crowd. Clyde Edwards-Helaire added 120 on the ground, showcasing his toughness and versatility, and the defense meanwhile held Texas to just 183 yards, suffocating an offense that many believed would test LSU's mettle. Clavon Chason and Patrick Queen both stepped up with big plays. Queen recorded 6 tackles and Chason had 2 sacks. LSU took down the Longhorns 38-21, and the message was unmistakable. This was a different LSU team that was playing with confidence, swagger, and just was ready to prove themselves on the biggest stage. The Tigers' next opponent was Missouri, a team on paper that looked like it wouldn't be much of a challenge, but LSU needed to enter the game determined not to overlook anyone, and they proved their dominance from the opening whistle. By the end of the first quarter, LSU jumped out to a 13-0 lead, showcasing their intent to dominate early and often. Joe Burrow threw for an incredible 485 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire added to the offensive explosion, rushing for 112 yards and 3 scores. Through the air, Justin Jefferson was unstoppable, amassing 224 yards on 8 catches, while Jamar Chase chipped in with 159 yards himself. The offense racked up 54 points, but this game was much more than just about putting up flashy numbers. It was about showing that killer instinct. On defense, Grant Delpit stood out, recording an interception and making 10 tackles, leading a unit that suffocated everything Missouri was trying to do. LSU walked away with a 54-27 victory, putting together another complete performance, with each quarter demonstrating another complete performance, and it was becoming clear that LSU wasn't just winning, they were overwhelming these SEC opponents. Finally, the Tigers faced Tennessee on Halloween night, a night that would prove to be terrifying for the Volunteers and would bring the Tigers one step closer to their ultimate goal. LSU's defense put on an absolute clinic, allowing only 7 points and dictating the game from start to finish. LSU jumped out to a 7-0 lead in the first quarter and never looked back, extending it to 24-0 by halftime with a 17-point second quarter. Burrow, as he had all season, played lights out, tossing 3 touchdown passes and making it look almost effortless. He threw 405 yards, connecting with Jamar Chase for 2 highlight-worthy touchdowns. including a 60-yard bomb that put the game firmly out of reach. Justin Jefferson was equally as impressive, catching 12 passes for 215 yards, continually finding gaps in the Tennessee defense, and Clyde was super effective both on the ground and through the air, picking up tough yards and scoring a touchdown. The defense led by Patrick Queen and Delpit overwhelmed Tennessee's offense, forcing them into mistakes and never letting them establish any rhythm. And Chason continued to terrorize quarterback, contributing a sack and multiple pressures that kept Tennessee's offense on its heels. And the Volunteers simply couldn't match LSU's intensity, and the Tigers cruised to a 41-7 victory. Now, LSU was getting stronger each week, and no one seemed capable of slowing them down. They weren't just out to win games, they were trying to dominate teams, and so far they were succeeding at every turn. With 4 dominant wins in a row, LSU had transformed from a team that everyone overlooked to one that no one could ignore. This stretch was about changing the narrative and proving that LSU was not only capable of competing with the best of the best, but that they were ready to lead the charge. The defense played just as crucial a role as the offense over this stretch, with standout performances from Stingley, Queen, Delpit, and Chason. And the rest of the country was finally taking notice, but LSU wasn't done yet. There was still bigger fish to fry, and the Tigers were ready to take on these challenges head on with a belief that this was just the beginning of something truly special. The first half of the season was over and LSU was undefeated. The Tigers had brushed off every challenge and silenced the critics who questioned if their new look offense could actually last. But now the stakes were rising. With each victory, the buzz around Baton Rouge grew louder. Joe Burrow wasn't just playing well, he was starting to look like the best quarterback in college football, and LSU's offense was torching defenses in a way that nobody in the SEC had ever seen before. But for all the momentum they were building, the biggest tests were still ahead. At this point in the season, Joe Burrow's name was starting to be whispered as a Heisman Trophy frontrunner.
Have a vote right now. Who's your Heisman Trophy winner? Jalen Hurts,
Burrow.
Tua,
Joe
Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
He is high on Joe Burrow.
Right now, Joe Burrow.
From a backup at Ohio State to now leading the Tigers to a potential championship, Burrow's rise wasn't just unexpected, it was unprecedented. The analysts were calling it a Cinderella story, but those inside the LSU program knew better. This wasn't luck. This was the result of relentless preparation, a chip on their shoulder, and a quarterback who was ready to prove everyone wrong. And the cherry on top was his chemistry with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And the rest of college football was starting to realize that this trio was unlike anything that we had ever seen. Jamar came into the season as a highly touted recruit with potential, but no one saw this coming. By mid-season, he was no longer just a promising receiver, he was turning into a superstar, a possible top 10 pick, and the most explosive weapon in a Tigers offense that seemed to have a limitless arsenal. With his combination of speed, strength, and elite route running, Chase was making every corner in the SEC look like a walk-on. Then there was Justin Jefferson, the 2-star recruit, an afterthought, a guy who was barely on anyone's radar when he came to LSU. Now he was becoming Burrow's go-to target, the one who made the tough catches look easy, the one who found open space. Jefferson wasn't supposed to be here. Not if you believe the recruiting rankings, but every Saturday he proved that he belonged, and he was one of the best receivers in the country, and his rise was just getting started. But as the second half of the season kicked off, LSU was ready to answer all the questions. The Tigers were done hearing about their soft schedule. They were done hearing about Alabama, Auburn, and the rest of the elite teams in the SEC, and they were done hearing about Joe Burrow's limited arm talent or Chase and Jefferson's lack of experience. This team was ready to show the nation that they were more than just a feel-good story. With Burrow playing out of his mind and his receivers turning every matchup into a mismatch, LSU was steamrolling through their whole schedule. They were putting up over 40 points a game against top 10 defenses, embarrassing rival teams in their own stadiums, and they turned every game into a highlight reel. The offense was so explosive, it was changing the way that people thought about SEC football. College football had a new juggernaut, and it wasn't in Tuscaloosa. It was in Baton Rouge, where the Tigers were putting up historic numbers and burying the ghosts of season past. But even as the wins piled up and the record books were rewritten, there was still one thing standing in their way: a showdown with the SEC's reigning king. But for all the fireworks and all the records, their season would still be judged by that one thing. Could they finish the job? Could they knock off the dynasty and bring the SEC crown back to Baton Rouge? Now, the first real test of the second half of the season came on the road against Mississippi State. The Bulldogs were desperate to salvage their season, and you could never go on the road in the SEC and overlook your opponent, and Mississippi State came out swinging, but LSU was ready. Joe Burrow continued his dominant form, throwing for 353 yards and a touchdown. Then Clyde Edwards-Helaire led the ground game, grinding out 95 yards and a score. The defense made key stops when it mattered, holding Mississippi State to just 307 total yards, forcing critical third down failures, and LSU jumped out to a commanding 34-7 lead by halftime. This showcased their intent to dominate early. Mississippi State did manage to close the gap a bit in the second half, but it was never enough. The Tigers walked away with a 40-20 victory, proving once again that they were not just beating teams, they were dismantling them. The win further silenced those who doubted whether LSU could handle the grind of the SEC play, and Burrow and company were ready for whatever challenge that came their way, and they were making it clear that this Tigers team was different. Now, getting into week 9, and the stakes were growing ever higher, and the Tigers moved all the way up to the number 2 team in the country, and now LSU welcome Auburn to Death Valley. This game was a battle from the start, with Auburn's offense showing resilience, but LSU's firepower was way too much to handle. Joe Burrow threw for an incredible 452 yards and 5 touchdowns, spreading the ball to his playmakers and showcasing the chemistry that made this offense unstoppable. Ja'Marr Chase had a standout performance, catching 8 passes for 186 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a breathtaking 48-yard score that put LSU firmly in control. The defense, led by Grant Delpit and Patrick Queen, made enough big plays to keep Auburn at bay. Despite allowing 38 points, LSU closed out the game with a 52-38 victory, proving once again they could handle the adversity and come out on top. And the doubters who said LSU couldn't handle a real challenge were starting to look foolish. Going into game number 10, and the Tigers continued their march through the SEC, looking like a true powerhouse and possibly a team of destiny. And next up, they needed to have a dominant performance against Kentucky. LSU's offense was firing on all cylinders from the start, with Burrow throwing for 356 yards and 5 scores again. He completed an impressive 81% of his passes. Clyde Edwards-Helaire added 144 on the ground, showing his versatility and toughness. Justin Jefferson led all receivers with 121 yards on 11 catches, while Ja'Marr Chase added 87 yards and a score. LSU's defense was relentless, holding Kentucky to just 143 yards and forcing multiple 3-and-outs. And by halftime, LSU had built a 35-0 lead, and they never looked back, cruising to a 45-7 win. This wasn't just a win, it was a statement. The Tigers were once again proving they could dominate anyone, anytime, anywhere, and the narrative was beginning to shift, and LSU was making believers out of everyone. Now rolling into game 11, and this marked the final regular season game for the Tigers, and they were facing Texas A&M, who is unranked, but they were always a tough out with athletes all over the field, and LSU entered the game as the number 2 team in the nation. The game was held at Kyle Field, a notoriously difficult environment where the Aggies had been undefeated this season, and this one was anything but easy. The game began with Joe Burrow once again dealing like he had been all season, finding Justin Jefferson on a quick out route, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire on a swing pass, moving the ball efficiently down the field. LSU faced an early 4th and 7 and decided to go for it, taking a deep shot to Thaddeus Moss, but the pass fell incomplete and Texas A&M took over on downs. The Aggies responded with their own methodical drive, running the ball effectively and completing short passes to keep LSU's defense on its heels. They moved inside LSU territory, but Patrick Queen stepped up, jumping a pass for a massive interception. Queen with the pick, and the Tigers take over. And with that play, LSU's defense is making a statement. Burrow wasted no time, taking advantage of the turnover, delivering a deep cross to Ja'Marr Chase before hitting Jefferson on a quick out to bring the Tigers inside the 10-yard line. Clyde Edwards-Helaire finished the drive, powering in the end zone to give LSU a 7-0 lead. Touchdown, Tigers! Clyde Edwards-Helaire bulldozes his way in, and LSU strikes first here at Kyle Field. Texas A&M responded by controlling the clock, going on a long drive with a mix of runs and short passes, and they were able to reach the LSU 10-yard line, but they could not punch it in, settling for a field goal to make it 7-3. LSU came right back, with Burrow finding Clyde Edwards-Helaire on a swing swing pass up the sideline for a big gain. Then a back shoulder throw to Chase put them in position, but Burrow ended up taking a sack, setting up a 3rd and long. Then Burrow saw a one-on-one matchup with Chase and took the shot. Burrow drops back, has Chase streaking down the sideline, lets it fly. Chase hauls it in. Touchdown, Tigers. And with that, LSU extends their lead to 14-3. Then Texas A&M, with 43 seconds left in the half, managed to move the ball to midfield and convert a crucial 3rd down. The Aggies quarterback scrambled to avoid pressure, finding an open receiver down to the LSU 4-yard line with 19 seconds left. They hurried to the line, but their pass into the end zone was broken up and they had to settle for another field goal. And this led to LSU leading 14-6 at halftime. The second half started with a bang. A&M opened with a big play, an 83-yard bomb for a touchdown. LSU brought pressure on the play, and that was a mistake. A&M was able to get a massive play to start the half. Then the Aggies ran QB power on the 2-point conversion and converted, and now they tied this one up at 14 apiece. LSU's next drive stalled, giving A&M good field position at their own 45-yard line. LSU brought an all-out blitz, hoping to swing the momentum, but the Aggies took advantage. Their quarterback stood tall in the pocket and found a streaking receiver down the sideline for a long touchdown, absolutely electrifying the crowd. Suddenly, Texas A&M had turned this game around, taking a 21-14 lead. With their backs against the wall, LSU faced a crucial moment. 3rd and long deep in their own territory, and Burrow's pass fell incomplete, but Coach O decided to make a bold decision and go for it on 4th and 14 on their own 21-yard line. So this was an absolutely massive play. Burrow takes the snap, he drops back, and he sees Moss on a crossing route. Once again, he fires it in. Moss breaks the tackle, and he sprints down the sideline for a game-tying touchdown. Burrow to Moss. He's got room. Touchdown, Tigers. What a play. 4th down. That was a ballsy call by Coach O. And with that, the game was knotted at 21. Then A&M gets the ball back. They reached midfield on their next drive, but are actually stopped on 4th down after a risky deep shot into double coverage falls incomplete. LSU takes over and went to work. Burrow hit a deep cross to Jefferson. Then Edwards-Helaire took a swing pass across midfield. Then Burrow rolled out of the pocket. He finds Jefferson downfield to bring them all the way down to the 1-yard line. And then from there, Clyde punched it in, and LSU went back out in front 28-21. But A&M refused to quit. They drove the ball down all the way to LSU's 1-yard line before powering it in to tie the game at 28 apiece with just over 8 minutes left in the game. With the game on the line, Burrow took control. Clyde Edwards-Helaire first broke off a big run, then Burrow connected with Jefferson on a curl route, and this turned into a huge gain after he broke tackles, and this took them all the way inside the 10-yard line. Then inside the 10, Burrow drops back. He finds Chase on a slant route on the backside of the play for a touchdown. Touchdown, Tigers. Burrow to Chase, and LSU takes the lead once again. And with that, the Tigers were back up 35-28. A&M had one last chance, moving the ball well and reaching LSU's 19-yard line. But as the Aggies quarterback tried to fit the ball into a tight window, Christian Fulton stepped in front for the interception. Fulton picks it off, and that's the game. That's going to do it. The Tigers are going to knock down the Aggies here at Kyle Field. With that, LSU was able to run out the clock, securing a hard-fought 35-28 victory. This wasn't the dominant performance that LSU fans were used to seeing this season, but it was a testament to the Tigers' resilience. Burrow threw for 465 yards and 3 scores. Edwards-Helaire added 101 on the ground and 2 scores as well. And Jamar Chase had 7 catches for 150 yards and a touchdown. The Tigers faced adversity, but they answered every challenge, proving once again that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Now, it was all leading to this. Every touchdown, every record shattered, every doubter silenced. It all came down to this final stretch. LSU had gone from being overlooked to overwhelming, from doubted to dominant, and there was still one final chapter left to be written. To cement their place in history, to be remembered as the greatest offense college football has ever seen, they had to finish the job. And that meant one thing: going undefeated running the table in the SEC and taking home the national title. Anything less would be a disappointment. But there was still one hurdle left on their way to an SEC crown, and that was Alabama in the SEC championship game. A showdown that wasn't just about winning a trophy, but slaying the ghosts that haunted the LSU faithful. Nick Saban's Alabama teams weren't just good, they were ruthless. They were the juggernaut of the conference, the unstoppable force that crushed any dreams of changing the SEC landscape. LSU had built their season on offense, but Alabama's defense was different. Loaded with future NFL stars, fast, physical, and disciplined, they were the perfect opponent to test if LSU's fireworks could withstand the storm. It wasn't just about Burrow and the receivers either. The offensive line, which had protected him all season, would face its toughest test yet against Alabama's vaunted pass rush. The running game, led by Clyde Edwards-Helaire, had gashed defenses all year, but couldn't find room against Bama's front seven stacked with five-star talent. More than anything, this game was going to be about a battle of wills. Joe Burrow's poise and pinpoint accuracy against the pressure of the biggest game of his career. And when the lights were brightest, it would be up to Burrow to prove that he was the best quarterback in the country and that LSU wasn't just an offensive powerhouse, they could be champions. As the Tigers took the field, the eyes of the entire nation were on Atlanta for the SEC championship. They weren't just playing for a title, they were playing for history, and it wasn't long before the fireworks started. Burrow and the Tigers offense knew against an Alabama defense you were going to have to tote the rock. Their pass rushes were just too athletic to give them repeated shots at your star quarterback.
And watch what this LSU offense is going to do here. 3rd and inches, you're not going to get cute, you're going to pull a guard and punch Alabama in the mouth.
Then 2 deep drops in a row would give Alabama their chance to be a bully. On 3rd down, Burrow got a clean pocket, but when Jefferson beat his man, Burrow missed his chance.
And if you're Burrow, that is one you are going to want back. You had a lot of room to get the ball in there. The one thing you can't do is put it behind your receiver.
A quick 3 and out would give LSU the ball right back.
That's another missed opportunity by the quarterback, but this time Alabama. 3rd down, chance for a big play. It's hard to move the ball on these defenses. This game might come down to which one of these guys is going to capitalize first.
2 well-blocked plays would set up LSU on the 5-yard line, and Burrow would make it look easy, walking through the B-gap for his first touchdown against the Tide after going scoreless the previous year. The Tide then would try to respond, but another missed throw would be another quick drive for the Tide offense, but they did get a strong punt where they would pin LSU and try to put a wet blanket on this Tigers offense.
The thing with these drives on your own goal line, for most play callers, they throw out 80% of their playbook. Don't expect that with LSU. I expect them to be aggressive here. And if it isn't Joe Burrow's legs that do it again.
On 2nd and 4, Burrow would look to attack the middle of the field again. He would throw it right to the linebacker, and the Tide would take advantage. They ran the ball 4 straight times, and they would capitalize and swing momentum back away from the Tigers.
And here's the thing with these big rivalry games. Often it's not the more dynamic team that wins, but the one that makes less mistakes. Oh, and as we say it, Burrow hitting the Alabama linebacking core is going to have another gift fall into their laps. It's like the curse of Nick Saban. LSU has had a lot of talented teams over the years, but he's like that one ex you just can't get over. Whenever things are looking good in your love life, she shows up and pulls it all back down.
Down 14-7, and some would say Joe Cool was rattled. Those who know Joe Cool, though, say he's got ice in his veins.
Joe's gonna hit Jefferson. Oh my God, he is gonna undress 2 defenders. Unbelievable. If you ask me, folks, that right there is the best football player in the nation. And Burrow is going to need to be very creative with his throwing lane here. Jefferson turns his shoulders, has to catch across his body full stride. And look what he does to 32, the safety. Puts him on ice. along with all his teammates.
LSU's defense would follow up, forcing Alabama into a crucial third down, and then they would showcase why they are the Crimson Tide.
Have a look at the tackling guards here just outpower their assignments. Spin move on Delpit and into LSU territory.
Pounding into the red zone, Alabama made a quick strike with the dagger, but Stevens, the safety, would make one of the most athletic plays on the football you would ever see. The score was even, but LSU had momentum and Burrow was hot, trotting into the red zone with a series of darts, but came up just short as the Tide pass rushers battered him down on this one. 35 seconds left, and Alabama was not gonna play it safe. They went for the jugular and they threw a perfect pass, deep bomb over the top, and they score. And this is gonna send LSU to the locker room absolutely reeling.
And here's the story right here. LSU might have a Heisman winner, Joe Burrow, but when you can be efficient in the run game, it makes it a lot easier for the man in red. I just don't know that Joe Burrow, with all his gaudy numbers, has shown us that he can overcome beating a team that's just better where it matters most.
Alabama up 7 would open up the second half, but a disciplined secondary would force a 3rd and long, giving time for a slick swim move by Tyler Singleton, which would set up his offense with great field position. Burrow would be quick to capitalize, finishing off LSU drives with a touchdown to his star tight end Thaddeus Moss. Over the next 2 drives, both teams would be forced into difficult third downs where the Alabama QB couldn't put it on the money. Joe Burrow would cash it in, and LSU would take its first lead in 2 quarters, and it wouldn't stop there. Opening the 4th with 2 absolute dimes, LSU would take a 2-score lead, and it would feel like their first victory over Saban was firmly in their grasp. As soon as the comfort came, though, it disappeared. A quick scoring drive by the Tide and a disastrous fumble by Joe Burrow would bring the game quickly back to even.
And I think this is where we're going to find out what Joe Burrow is really made of. Your defense is having trouble. You spot them 7 with your mistake. Now you got to rally your guys, make some easy completions, and bring everything back into focus. Oh my God. There it is. Interception, Alabama. He's going to cut it inside. Back outside. He's got room to go. At the 30, he is going to go for a brought down by Jefferson at the 5-yard line. That was just a bad ball. Bad effort by Chase. 2 long turnovers in a row by Burrow. Joe Cool is melting.
A clutch goal line stand by the defense would be the silver lining for that drive, and with only 2 minutes left, LSU would be getting the ball back with a chance for Burrow to go back to work. One final chance to redeem this 4th quarter for all the marbles, SEC championship on the line. 2 more quick completions would bring the Tigers into the red zone, where LSU's line would get to the 2nd level and destroy Alabama's linebackers, helping Clyde Edwards-Helaire down the ball at the 2-yard line.
If I'm Burrow here, I'm looking for Jefferson to make a play. Chase has been kept quiet all game, and I think it's gotten to him. No interceptions. Burrow's going to drop. Chase on the bubble. Tackled at the line. Touchdown. LSU. And the Tigers will take a late lead over the Crimson Tide. What a game!
And with Alabama getting the ball back, they did have a chance, but the Tigers defense holds strong, forcing a final 4 and out to seal the game. Joe Burrow took the field for the victory formation, and as the seconds ticked away, the roar of the LSU faithful echoed through the stadium. They had finally taken down their biggest rival, Alabama, in the SEC championship, erasing years of heartbreak and frustration. This was a statement, a declaration that LSU had taken the throne. They were undefeated and were now one step closer to the ultimate prize. After running through the gauntlet of the SEC and claiming the conference title, LSU's path to the national championship was set, but the journey wasn't over. They headed into the 12-team playoff as the #1 seed, and they were determined to finish what they started. They had a first-round bye, and then after that, their first playoff matchup came against Oregon, a high-flying attack with speed all over the field, and while talented, after overcoming Alabama, it felt like this might be a team of destiny. Oregon tried to keep up with LSU's relentless offense, but from the first whistle, it was clear that Joe Burrow and his squad were ready to dominate. Burrow put on a clinic, throwing for an incredible 502 yards and 5 scores, spreading the ball effortlessly to his elite receiving core. Jamar Chase led the way with 119 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, while Thaddeus Moss came up big with 132 yards of his own. The Ducks defense had no answer for the sheer versatility and explosiveness of the Tigers, and despite a few turnovers, Burrow and company never lost control of this game. By halftime, LSU had made it clear they were on another level, going up 28-13, and the offense continued to hum as the defense held Oregon to just 23 points on the day, allowing the Tigers to cruise to a 49-23 win. With each passing quarter, LSU cemented their status as the team to beat, showing once again that they were firing all cylinders and ready to complete their mission. Then in the next round, they faced UAB, a team that had defied the odds to reach the semifinals and was on a Cinderella run. The Tigers came in as the super heavy favorites, and if they could take down the upstarts, they would punch their ticket to the national championship. From the opening kickoff, LSU showed that they were here to finish what they started. Burrow continued his stellar play, throwing for 302 yards and 5 touchdowns, picking apart the UAB defense with precision. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was equally relentless, rushing for 111 yards while showing off his ability to break tackles and extend plays. Thaddeus Moss and Jamar Chase each added 2 touchdowns, overmatching UAB's defense at every turn. Defensively, LSU suffocated UAB, holding them to just 14 points and forcing multiple 3-and-outs. Shelvin and Chason led the charge with big stops, while Patrick Queen snagged a critical interception that swung the momentum further in LSU's favor. By the final whistle, the Tigers had rolled to a 52-14 victory, showing their high-powered offense and stifling defense were peaking at the perfect time. This commanding win set the stage for a showdown against Georgia in the national championship. One final battle to claim the throne. And now that stage was set. Standing between LSU and perfection was the familiar foe, the Georgia Bulldogs. This wasn't just another game, it was a chance to beat their 2 biggest rivals, with LSU first taking down Bama in the SEC championship and now the Dogs. This was the chance for LSU to put an exclamation point on a season for the ages. But Georgia wasn't coming to play the role of underdogs. They were a team built to challenge teams like LSU, tough, physical, and disciplined on defense, with a front 7 that could shut down any rushing attack and a secondary that thrived on forcing mistakes. They were out to prove that their defense could stand up to the Tigers' record-breaking attack. For LSU, this was the final test. A win here wouldn't just earn them a national title. It would solidify their place among the greatest teams of all time. Undefeated, dominant, unforgettable. Everything was on the line, and one game stood between the Tigers and immortality.
So it'll be Georgia's offense looking to get things started here tonight and hoping to be more than just the opening act. They're likely to lean on the ground game a bit more frequently than LSU tonight and try to keep that historic 634-yard-a-game offense on the sidelines as long as they can.
To get this started, a free rush sack by Rashard Lawrence would put an early halt to Georgia's opening drive, making way for LSU superstars to start their first national championship game in prime position.
Burrow, play action, looking for Chase and intercepted. Double coverage, that ball had no business being thrown. Defender steps in front, and after a quick turnover on downs, Georgia's offense will have another chance to strike first.
After 2 nice third down conversions, the Bulldogs were faced with a 3rd and 7 in the red zone, but LSU called a nickel blitz, and they forced the Georgia quarterback out of the pocket, where Clavon Chason pocketed his first sack of the national title game. With Burrow getting his second bite at the apple, he locked in and redeemed an earlier mistake by going back to his star receiver Jamar Chase and converting a big 3rd down. With that behind him, it was big play after big play, capping the drive off with a Justin Jefferson jet sweep and another absolutely amazing highlight reel touchdown. After exchanging field goals, the score would be 10-6, with LSU having a chance to drive and go into halftime up 2 scores. Throwing the rock all over the field, they would quickly advance down to the 1-yard line. 3rd and goal and needing a stop, Georgia would try to bracket and get their hands on Jefferson at the line, but the LSU offense just had too many options. Driving through contact, Jefferson secured a perfectly timed pick play, and 2 defenders caught in a net, and Thaddeus Moss was wide open in the end zone.
Now, as easy as the LSU passing attack made that drive look, the question is, did they leave too much time on the clock for Georgia here? Or are you thinking, quick stop, give it back to our offense, and we'll put another one in before the half?
Minute left, and LSU decides to get aggressive and bring in all-out blitz, and there's a one-on-one coverage down the field, and the Georgia Bulldogs capitalize a 75-yard walk-in touchdown and an absolutely massive play for Georgia right before the half. Then Burrow gets the ball back with 40 seconds on the clock, and he wants to make a big play. He's looking to push it down the field. Jefferson has a step, but the corner undercuts the route.
Bad of an interception as that is, these coaching decisions are baffling. You had an easy lead going into the half, but just like that, you give up 2 scores to the Bulldogs, and now momentum's on their side.
But coming out of the half, pre-snap, Burrow sees a one-on-one on the outside. He snaps the ball, and Jamar Chase beats his man like a drum, and he is wide open, and Burrow uncorks a 75-yard touchdown of his own to Jamar Chase.
From the 20 to the 20, that ball sailed 80 yards. Joe Burrow has a rocket of an arm.
And the drama would not stop there. Explosive plays and deflating turnovers would continue to be the story of the day as safety Grant Delpit picked off the Georgia QB, and then Joe Burrow hit McMath on a wide receiver screen for another score, putting LSU up 15.
For the Bulldogs, it's all about how you choose to respond now. Do you keep pushing to make it all back at once and risk another turnover that would put this game right out of reach, or do you put the ball in your running back's hands? I just don't think you can beat LSU in a shootout. Georgia gonna run to the strong side of the field. He's got open space, and the DBs do not turn back to see the Georgia running back streaking through open field.
After Georgia brought the game to within 8, both teams would continue their streak of explosive plays, notching 7 more points each.
Throwing the ball up, he's got a man open, he splits the defenders, he's got green grass ahead of him, that will be a go-ahead Georgia touchdown, bringing the game back to within 1 score.
With 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, though, things hung in the balance with a third down from the 3-yard line, and LSU had a chance to put the game away.
Edward Tulane with the ball, forced to bounce it outside, and Georgia is going to get a much-needed stop with time left on the clock to work.
With LSU settling for 3, Georgia had a chance. Carving their way up the field with 3 timeouts, it looked like they were going to have enough time to score and have a chance at the last possession.
3rd and 8 here. Georgia needs to go for it all. Drops back, he's going to test Stingley, tip drill, right to Vincent, intercepted. What a play by the LSU defense. Tip drill perfection. Stingley Jr. to Vincent Jr. The LSU Tigers have done it. The stadium is erupting. The confetti is falling. Joe Burrow and the Tigers have completed the perfect season and cementing their place in history. This, a moment for the ages. LSU stands atop the college football world.
And there you have it, folks. LSU has finished one of the most remarkable seasons in college football history. They defeated Alabama, Oregon, UAB, and finally the Georgia Bulldogs to claim the national championship. Joe Burrow led his team to a perfect 16-0 record, throwing an incredible 7,022 passing yards and 66 touchdowns. Jamar Chase had 1,973 yards and 23 scores. Justin Jefferson narrowly edged him out in yards with 2,083 and 15 touchdowns of his own. This duo might be the best pair of college receivers we have ever seen, and they showed why they deserve to go down as an all-time great duo. Clyde Edwards-Helaire added balance to their attack with 1,540 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns, while the LSU defense made play after play, led by Grant Delpit and Clavion Chason. This was a complete complete team effort, and every single player contributed to this unforgettable journey. LSU finished the season with an astounding 8,786 yards with 7,000 passing yards and 1,700 rushing yards, averaging an incredible 47.5 points per game. Comparing that to the real 2019 LSU team, which totaled 8,526 yards, including 6,000 passing yards and 2,500 rushing yards, and they averaged 48.4 points per game. This simulated LSU squad proved to be even more dominant through the air, led by Joe Burrow's prolific passing attack. This has been an unforgettable journey for LSU, matching and even surpassing some of the records set by that legendary 2019 team. Now, if you enjoyed this, make sure to like the video and then subscribe so you never miss another video. And don't forget to leave a comment on what historic team you would like us to cover next. LSU is one of the greatest and has a ton of storylines, but there is a ton of other classic college football teams that we'd love to retell their story, so make sure you guys comment down below.